All right, so my tax accountant, they're a pretty big name in the UK, right? They reached out because we wanted to tackle something that's been on everyone's mind. It's these recent changes to the UK national insurance contributions. We're going to really dig into what these cuts mean for your money, your household, like how it actually hits your pocket. And we're going to be using some info from the Spring Statement 2025 to give you the full picture.
Yeah, definitely. These changes are going to be felt by a lot of people. It's going to affect their take-home pay, so let's dive into the specifics.
All right, so let's start with those of you who are employed. The main thing to know is the rate you pay for Class 1 national insurance. That's the one on what you earn between £12,570 and £50,270. That's gone down.
Right.
It's gone from 10% to 8%, and that kicked in on April 6th, 2024. But, and this is important, this isn't the first time we've seen a change like this recently, right?
No, not at all.
Back in January of 2024, there was a reduction from 12% down to 10%, so it seems like we're seeing a trend here.
Absolutely. A downward trend. And for our self-employed listeners out there have been similar changes for you as well. So that main rate for Class 4 national insurance, which applies to your profits, again, in that same range from 12,570 to 50,270 pounds, that has also decreased. This time it's gone from 8% to 6%. And that also started on April 6th, 2024. Again, this followed a previous cut, down from 9% to 8%. So yeah, you're right, a very similar pattern for both employees and the self-employed.
So we're seeing a lot of numbers being thrown around here, a lot of dates. But for those of you listening, what you really want to know is, okay, how does this affect me? Who's actually going to see this in their bank account?
Well, if you're employed and you earn more than 12,570 pounds a year, you're going to directly see the impact of this Class 1 NIC's reduction. However, if you earn less than that, you don't pay national insurance anyway, so you're not really going to notice a difference.
Makes sense. And how about for those running their own businesses? What's the situation there?
Same idea, really. If you're self-employed and your yearly profits are more than that 12,570 pound mark, then you'll be affected by this Class 4 NIC's reduction. But if you're below that, then this change won't apply. Simple as that.
So it sounds like a lot of people in the UK are going to feel these changes one way or another. But I think it's important to step back and look at the bigger picture here. These changes to national insurance, they're not happening in isolation, are they?
No, they're definitely not. It's all part of a wider set of changes related to tax that have been happening.
Right. Like we mentioned earlier, there were already reductions to national insurance rates earlier this year. There were those changes in January and April for employees, and then another change in April for the self-employed. So it's the combined impact of all of these changes that's really going to make a difference to your finances over the coming year.
Exactly.
And we actually have some analysis from Deloitte that helps put some numbers on this.
Yeah, they've crunched the numbers, and they've found that if you're an employee who's paid monthly and you earn around 50,000 pounds a year, you could actually be paying over 125 pounds less in national insurance each month compared to the start of the last tax year.
Wow, that's a pretty big chunk of change.
Yeah, it's a significant saving for sure.
And how about for our self-employed listeners? What kind of impact are we talking about for them?
Well, Deloitte looked at that too. They estimate that a self-employed trader with profits just over 50,000 pounds will end up paying about 1,131 pounds less in Class 4 NICs in this tax year, 2024-25, compared to last year, 2023-24.
Again, that's a significant amount.
Definitely. That's money that stays in your business or your pocket.
Now, the Spring Statement 2025 itself gives us a sense of just how many people are likely to benefit from these changes.
Right. The OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, estimates that something like 27 million employees and over 2 million self-employed individuals in the UK will feel the positive impact of these changes to national insurance. So it's pretty wide-reaching policy.
Those numbers really highlight the scale of this. And I think to help everyone understand what this could mean for them personally, it would be useful to look at some specific examples of the kind of savings we're talking about.
Definitely. Let's do that. So the Spring Statement 2025 actually gives a really useful example. They say that if you're an average employee and your salary is about 35,400 pounds a year, you could be saving around 450 pounds each year, just from that most recent cut, the one from 10% to 8%.
Right, so that's just from the latest change. But remember, there was that earlier reduction as well, from 12% to 10%. What does that mean for someone on that same salary if we take both changes into account?
Well, if you factor in that initial cut, from 12% to 10% at the start of the year, that average earner, the one with the 35,400 pound salary, they could be looking at almost 900 pounds in total annual savings.
That's pretty substantial.
It is. It could make a real difference to someone's budget.
Now, we don't have specific examples for every income level, but it's important to understand that your actual savings will vary depending on your circumstances, your income, and where you fall within that 12,570 pound to 50,270 pound range.
Absolutely. The closer you are to the higher end of that range, the more you're going to save in absolute terms from these percentage cuts.
Now, it seems like these national insurance cuts are a good thing for a lot of people. It's money back in their pockets. But we also know that tax and personal finance, it's not always so straightforward.
You're absolutely right. There are always other things to consider. And Deloitte actually brought up a really important point in their analysis, in their Our View section. They reminded us that while we have these cuts to national insurance rates, we also have this freeze on the personal allowance and the income tax bans.
Right, so can you break that down for us a little? What does that freeze actually mean for people's finances?
Sure. So basically, as your wages go up over time, maybe because of inflation, maybe you get a promotion, you might find yourself moving into a higher income tax bracket, or maybe you'll have to start paying income tax if you weren't before. So while you might be saving money on your national insurance, you might end up having to pay a bit more in income tax. It's a bit of a balancing act.
So what it really comes down to is looking at your overall financial picture. Just because your national insurance might be lower doesn't automatically mean you'll have more money at the end of the day. It depends on what happens with your income tax.
Exactly. And Deloitte's analysis suggests that most people who are earning 23,000 pounds or more, they're likely to save more in national insurance than they'll lose with the income tax changes. But, and this is important, the exact amount will be different for each person depending on their individual salary. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
So it's important to keep that nuance in mind. Are there any groups of people who won't be affected by these national insurance cuts at all?
Yeah, these cuts are specifically for those who are employed or self-employed. So if your main source of income comes from something else, like a pension or dividends, then you won't directly benefit from these particular tax changes.
So this is really aimed at people who are earning through employment or running their own businesses.
That's right.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. This has been a really good look at the recent national insurance cuts and what they could mean for you. So to sum it all up for everyone.
The main takeaway is that if you're either employed or self-employed, and your income or profits are within that 12,570 to 50,270 pound range, then it's very likely that you'll see a reduction in your national insurance bill starting from April 6th, 2024. And that means more money in your pocket each month.
Well, but as we've been saying, it's really important to keep things in perspective.
Absolutely. You have to look at these savings in the context of the wider picture of the tax system, especially that freeze on personal allowances and income tax bans. That could, for some people, offset some of those gains. And of course, these benefits only apply if you earn money through employment or self-employment.
So for those of you listening at home, if you want to really understand how these changes will impact your own situation, what's the best thing to do?
Well, given how personal these calculations are and how they interact with the rest of the tax system, the best thing to do is get some advice that's tailored to your specific circumstances. And I'd highly recommend getting in touch with the experts at My Tax Accountant. They can give you the personalized information you need to really understand what these changes mean for you.
Sound advice. Thanks for breaking all of this down for us, and thanks again to My Tax Accountant for making this conversation happen.
You're welcome. It's important that everyone has a clear understanding of how these adjustments might affect their finances.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.